by far, the biggest question that I get is how can I strengthen my starter? Well, stick around because we are going to talk about it. Let's say you have started your sourdough journey and you have had a hard time getting loaves to turn out. Maybe they are flat, dense. Maybe they don't brown well in the oven. Maybe your dough is so sticky that you cannot manage it. All these things can be so frustrating, but almost all of the time, it's your starter. Like, I could just go through a long list of a Facebook group questions, and every time I see a picture, I'm like, it's your starter, it's your starter, it's your starter, it's your starter. So let's go over how we can strengthen a starter. First thing that you can do to strengthen a starter is peak-to-peak feeding. And the hardest thing about peak-to-peak feeding is knowing when your starter's at peak. Because I would say a lot of people, and you may have seen one of my other videos about this, a lot of people have been told that a starter is at peak when it doubles, or to use it when it doubles. And it is just frankly not good enough. For a starter to be strong enough to make bread that looks like this, then it has to at least triple. I know some people may disagree, and there are probably cases where some people can still get really good bread and it not triple, but I would bear to say that they have a super established starter that has been strong for a really long time. So if you're just starting out though, and you're building your starter from scratch, or you got a starter from a friend and it's just not that great, or you're trying to rehydrate a starter, like, you really do need to take the time to strengthen it. So peak to peak feeding just mainly means that you are letting your starter come completely to peak as much as it will possibly grow, catching it before it falls. So what you will see with a starter that is close to peak is it is still, I always can look at it and see like, okay, it's still growing. It is going to be domed on the top. It's going to have a really thick appearance with very few bubbles. So it doesn't look watery. It doesn't look super bubbly and airy. At that point, it's still growing. So if you were to stop and use it then, you just aren't using it at its full potential. If you were to stop and feed it, then you're actually going to weaken it, because the yeast population is going to be the biggest when it's at its full growth. Conversely, if you were to let it peak and then you don't catch it and then it falls all the way back down, the longer that you let it fall back down, the higher the acidity rate. So if you feed your starter when it's hungry at, the bare bones at the bottom, like, yes, you need to feed it, but you risk having an acidic starter, because that acidity is hard to get rid of once it's there. So if you have an acidic starter, what you could have is a starter that grows really well. Like, it could still double or triple, but the way that it looks is far different. So a starter that is acidic has like lots of little bubbles, lots of watery looking bubbles. Like, I think it makes me think of like bubble bath. And so that is very different than this, which is very bubbly on top, but it's more like cratered. And so these are just things that the more that you do it, the more that you can understand what you're actually looking at and what you're looking for. So catching your starter at peak, what I would recommend is making sure that you have a clean jar that you can visually see, because right now you'll see this dirty jar. This starter that I just put in there is not that much. So at peak, it's probably going to be around this area. So if I wasn't home and I wasn't able to watch it, I wouldn't know if it had fallen. Like, I can see if it's still growing. I can visually see that from the top. But if I were to look at it from the side with all this mess here, I'm not going to see the little squiggly line that you can see here, where you can visually very distinctly see that it has started to fall. So these are just like little things that make a big difference. So peak to peak feedings, that's your first go. I would probably do that 3 to 4 times. And then the next thing I would talk about is feeding ratio. In a lot of people's minds, I think they assume that 1:1:1 is going to be the best feeding because that's going to be the strongest. And there are times when that is the case, and that's okay. But if your starter is living in the fridge the majority of the time, or your starter has that acetone smell, like 1:1 is not what we should be doing. So what I would recommend is doing at least a 1:2:2 feeding. So for example, if you are going to keep 10 grams of starter, you would feed it 20 grams of water, 20 grams of flour. Another thing, if you're not using a scale, like, what are you even doing? They are very, very, very inexpensive, and I just feel like it's one thing, it's precise and it's accurate, and that is what you need. Rant over. Okay, so you're using a food scale, you're measuring. If 1:2:2 is still not helping get rid of the acidity, then I would do a couple really large feedings. So then I'd probably honestly just go 1:10:10, and I would probably do that 2 times. So what you have to also take into account is timing and temperature. So 1:1 should double, if you have a strong starter, should double in 3 to 4 hours at room temperature. 1:10:10 could take 8 hours to double, probably 12 hours to peak. So if you're feeding 1:1 and then you go to bed, most likely it's peaked and fallen before you get up in the morning. So then you're running the risk of that acidity level climbing again. So all you have to do really in that case is feed it a higher ratio so that you have more time to get to it so that you can feed it peak to peak. So timing, temperature also. If your house is really cold, it's going to take longer, but that's not always a bad thing. So if you need it to go all night because you want to use it first thing in the morning, and your house is really cold, maybe you can do a 1:2:2 or a 1:3:3 because it's going to take so much longer to peak because your house is cold. So, and when I say cold, I'm going to say like 64 to like 68 degrees. That to me would be the cold temperature. The other issue is trying to keep it too warm. So when you're using traditional yeast, it can withstand a lot warmer temperatures. Sourdough yeast cannot. So a starter can also become acidic when the temperature is kept too warm for too long. So I personally see a lot of people that are using their oven because it's warmer. And if you do that, I mean, you risk that it could get too hot. So I would absolutely check the temperature of your oven with a thermometer. Our oven light doesn't work anymore because I tried this, but our oven light, the environment just kept getting warmer and warmer and warmer. It was well over 100 degrees. So check it like when you put it in there, but also check it as time goes on because the longer the light is on, the warmer that it could get. So if you're not checking the temperature and you're using that to store your starter all the time, and then your bread is turning out flat, that could be why. You have created this extra warm environment for bacteria to grow. The lactic acid bacteria has taken over the yeast. That's a problem. So I think sometimes we get impatient or we think like it has to be kept warmer, and there's a point wherein it's just not helpful, that it's actually harmful. So I think if that is the issue, your house is really cold, just try to plan for it taking longer. So something else that you can do just to keep it a tiny bit warmer. All right. So just to keep it a little bit warmer, like just a little coat for your starter, that can be helpful. So there's little things that you can do if you don't have like a proofing box, but something else that might be less expensive than a proofing box would be like a plant warming mat. But just again, check the temperature just to make sure it's not too hot. Okay, so let's say we have adjusted our feeding ratio. We have done peak to peak feedings. What is the next thing that you could do? That would be adding rye flour. So this I personally like better than whole wheat. I know that a lot of people will, say to add whole wheat to their starter. Personally, I just feel like rye works better. I use a whole lot less. So when I add rye to my starter, let's say I'm, adding 50 grams of flour, I might add 45 grams of my regular flour to 5 grams of rye flour. You don't need very much. I would not use it every single time. I would do it 2 or 3 times. I do it just once in a while just to help kind of keep my starter strong. I like to do it before I dehydrate my starter because I sell my dehydrated starter. So I like to just give it like a little bit of boost before I dehydrate it. Can be really, really helpful. The next thing that I would recommend is when you're feeding those ratios, so let's say we're doing the 1 to 2 to 2, I always add just a few grams more flour than water. And this seems like such a small, trivial thing, but we're just keeping that starter a little bit on the thicker side. So if I do 20 grams of water, then I'll probably do 23 grams of flour. So just little things like that have really helped me. I can't say I can give you any scientific reason why that last one works, but I personally like it. So it's worth giving it a try. So I hope that this video is helpful and I hope that it gives you some ideas and tips so that you can be making beautiful, beautiful bread because that is what I want for all of you. And if you enjoy this video, please subscribe, please like the video. I know that it sounds silly, but it makes a really big difference, especially when I've got, 10, 12,000 views on a video, but yet not very many subscribers. So I enjoy doing this. I would love it if you would help get the word out, and it's so much fun. So let me know in the comments what kind of videos you would like to see, and I will try to get those up as soon as possible. All right, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.